Great. All right, the board just met in executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation. No action was taken. So we will go ahead and move straight to the approval of the agenda. Shields.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as written.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. So before we move in, we have a public hearing. I'm going to read in everything that's here. This public hearing on policy 1510, which is about regular board meetings and rules. On April 9th, 2022, Governor Hochul signed Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022 relating to the New York State budget for the 2022-2023 state fiscal year. Included in this bill is an amendment to the open meetings law to make permanent the expanded use of video conferencing by public bodies to conduct open meetings under extraordinary circumstances, regardless of a declaration of emergency. This public hearing is required prior to our adoption of changes to this policy, regular board meetings and rules, and the associated procedures, which we have here and are also to be found on the website. Members of the board and public will be given the opportunity, and this is it, to ask questions and make comments. Once everyone has had their say, I will close the public hearing. So consider the public hearing be open. I don't know if we have anybody here this evening that would like to speak about it. Here, is there any feedback or any questions from the board? No?
Yeah, everyone remembers what this is all about, right? The public hearing is just part of adopting this policy, yeah.
Yes, I did want to, there is some language in the policy about authorizing individuals on the board to participate remotely, but it doesn't really say who has the agency to authorize that. Is that the board president? Is that that's just an open question to look up there. So I don't know.
Can you refer exactly to what you're referring to? What exact language that is?
It's twice in there. I'll have that right. It might be our own.
So the first mention of authorizing, the board must have adopted a resolution authorizing the use of extraordinary circumstances. So that's just saying that we would be willing to do this.
Right. And the second use, which might be very
Is authorized and must. Feel like. So my reading of the use of the word authorization or authorizing in here is more about authorizing that we're going to allow this. I think it's been really left. I mean, it's been really kind of honest, like not super specific about when we would let this happen. And I think like, so the idea of a person joining virtually without making open, without opening wherever they are to the public, it seems to me like that would be a decision that's made jointly by the board president and the clerk and the superintendent without, yeah, I think so. Oh, but actually, I mean, in our, there's regulations for how, there's also the regulations for how,
What's extraordinary?
for what's extraordinary. So I really feel like that's what, so we're also, the policy authorizes this possibility and the procedures make really clear exactly the process through which that would happen. Did I capture that well enough? Okay.
Okay, great. That's all I wanted to know. Consider this public hearing closed. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on January 3rd, 2043, 7 p.m. in the Auditorium on the Haldane Central School District. We were supposed to be there this evening, but because of uncertain weather on Friday, The winter concert was rescheduled and it is in this effect. I look forward to returning there soon. We have a full agenda, so.
As you said, Sean, we have a full agenda, so as one note for me, I wanted to acknowledge and express my appreciation to Mr. Sauer, Mr. Berardi, and Ms. Stein, as well as our students who were not part of the K-8, I'm sorry, I should say the elementary and middle school winter concert last week, which is fantastic. Certainly a full house, and as Sean mentioned, the high school concert this evening, so that's going on right now down in the auditorium. Thus, Mrs. Stiffen is there instead of here. I thought teachers and kids did a fantastic job. A great concert. With that, since it is a full agenda, if we could transition to Josephine's report,
That'd be great.
let's provide a high school report now.
Sure.
You can come right up to the podium. It's not my fault.
Let's see Joseph's sweatshirt tonight.
What is it, Boston College? No.
So we obviously this December has a Midsummer Night's Dream play. So the Haldane Drama Club had a successful weekend performing in Midsummer Night's Dream. Congratulations to Martha McNall, Andrea McHugh, and the entire cast and crew. In addition, thank you to Damien McDonald, Donna Chandler, Christine Booker, Jim McNall, Kathleen Ferry, Jill Shoppett, Matt Coke, Jeff Sniffen, Mike Bernstein, Barton Chu, John Hedlund, Heidi Stevens, Draina Fagan, Catherine Kelly, and Christy DeRosa for volunteering to assist our drama club. The play was a huge success as the students and faculty have been working endlessly this past few months to prepare for the play. Congratulations to our senior performers and tech crew on their last play, including Sam Bates, Pete Bolte, Meg Colum, Alex Daniloff, Nina Perricone, Sophie Fagan, Lucas Vladimiroff, and Conrad White. Everyone did an amazing job, and we all look forward to the announcement of the high school musical. Secondly, we have a guidance update. As of December 12th, the guidance office has processed 962 college applications. Last year, we processed a total of 566. We expect this number to continue to climb as many college applications are not due until January 15th. This aligns with the trend seen across the nation. Our research and media class has put together the linked presentation on the college process. As decision dates have arrived, our students have had numerous acceptances as well as vast amounts of money given towards scholarships. These prestigious universities included Georgetown, NYU, Fordham, Penn State, Providence, and Drexel. Internationally include schools such as McGill. Save the date, Haldane will be hosting our annual BOE Tech Center presentation on Thursday, February 16th at 6 p.m. Finally, we have senior internships. Once the student body returns on January 3rd from our holiday break, the senior classes begin preparing for their senior internships. Mrs. Grenice is recently taking responsibility of internship oversight until multiple seniors begin the search early. Local businesses have remained prevalent outlets for these internship opportunities, as have daycares and multiple local forms.
Does anyone have any questions?
I'm
sorry. You may not.
Tell us about your college.
As of about 5 minutes ago, I shot such the University of Tennessee. Thank you, as well as South Carolina and University.
It was good to have up.
Thank you so
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
All right, moving on to our special presentation for the evening. Special presentation.
Megan, remind me, how are we doing? You will skip, I will.
How would you like to do it? Would you like to stay seated?
No, I'll come up. Is it on that clicker?
Right behind you.
No, I mean to advance this. I don't think clicker.
You can do it either way.
Unrehearsed. First points, usually it's supposed. So, Catherine and I just wanted to provide a brief introduction to the budget development process for the 23-24 school year. This is typically the time where we begin these conversations before. We just have base level of information that we're going to provide the board this evening to answer questions. I don't know if there'll be many or if there's many answers that we'll be able to provide. But a few things to go through just to begin to set the context for budget development for the upcoming school year. We'll go through some background information, a brief note on foundation aid, some other preliminary information that we've been able to discern at this point. We'll talk about next steps. Just to note that this current year's, school year's, tax levy was 3.67%. The final assessment resulted in a net 3.05% increase in the tax rate through the budget that we're currently in. On a positive note, we're in this period of time where we're going to see the full restoration of foundation aid, or should continue to. That's going to have a significant impact on our foundation aid for the upcoming school year. You'll note here in 22-23, our foundation aid increased to $2 million. That was about a $250,000 increase. And we're projecting for 23-24, the final restoration of that, and the full restoration of that, which would be $2.8 million in total foundation aid to the school district, which is a $750,000 increase for our foundation. We'll hope that holds true. Every thing we have read and seen up to this point suggests that it will, although some of you have been board members for a long time and have seen through the state budget development process, some things can occur, but we'll remain hopeful that the foundation will fully restore next school year. We do project that health insurance premiums will increase approximately 7%. Our TRS projection is at 10%, which is a decrease from the previous year, yet our ERS will increase to 11.6. I'm sorry, to 13.1 of all salaries. We're currently working on our BOCES budget, and that will we'll have more clear figures on that next month. And the district had received a level of funding from the federal government due to the COVID pandemic, and that came in through different funding streams. One was the American Rescue Plan, one was the ESSER level of funds. So we had funded an interventionist position through those monies, and we have to take into account as we go into budget development that as that funding is exhausted, we'll need to account for that position through the local share if we wish to be. So just something to keep in mind. So as we begin to go through budget development, there's a few related items that are relevant to this conversation as it relates to our work for this school year. One of those items is the scheduling work that was budgeted for this school year that's ongoing right now. Our literacy professional learning, again, which was budgeted for through last year's budget development process, and our continued plans with that, as well as the special education audit, which Dr. Cation is going to share a little bit more information with you about this evening. And the results of that audit very well may inform budget development as we go into next school year. There's also three related factors that will influence budget development: the tax levy calculation, which we should have a clearer picture of next month with the governor's executive proposal to arrive at that figure. That obviously influences the revenue we can draw from the local share, as well as we're in the process of hearing from our retirees whether or not they intend to retire, I should say, from our faculty in particular. So retirees have to notify us by the end of this month. So we're hearing from some individuals or have already. That deadline soon approaching, and that will further influence budget development. Our next budget presentation, I'd actually like to shift from January, the early January meeting, which I believe is on the 3rd, to January 17th, just because it's so short after break. I don't think we considered that as we went into budget development, or I'm sorry, when we presented the calendar to you a couple of weeks ago. So we'll actually prefer to present the administrative and capital components as well as any additional propositions on January 17th, as opposed to January 3rd, I think it was originally scheduled for. And that allows us to perhaps begin to establish a more comprehensive outlook than what we're able to share with you today. So it's at this point that we typically establish some parameters for budget development. I'm actually holding on that because I think we'll be in a much better position to share with the board what those parameters are, or to ask the board, I should say, for those parameters next month when we have a more comprehensive view of what some of these figures are that may influence budget development as compared to what we have right now. Just as an example of that, the previous years the board has endorsed developing the budget up to the levy limit. I think next month we'll actually be able to tell you what the levy limit is, and we can have that discussion then, as opposed to seeking your endorsement on that tonight without a figure in mind. So that's where we'll be from January 7th. we'll pause there, and it's a brief overview, but if there's any questions, Catherine.
My only question is procedural. Is there anything that we need to act on if we're going to adjust the budget calendar?
It was approved by the board.
It was approved by the board, correct? I mean, in this conversation, be able to approve changing the date or at least.
I think as long as we have your thumbs up that that's acceptable, then that should suffice. If we go back and learn that we have to take action, we'll present to you on better.
Yeah, there was not a budget responsibility assigned to the 17th meeting, so it doesn't shift anything else in doing that.
And I don't remember, it's not like there's a resolution to adopt it, so I think, yeah.
There's other dates in the calendar that are situated in particular places as required by law. But
Right.
the presentation on the 17th is not one of them.
About we'll get more information about the interventionist and how that might, currently the interventionist, to the best of our knowledge, is being employed and used.
Yes, and Ms. Matula works as an elementary interventionist. She's providing academic intervention support to elementary students and has been for the last 2 school years. The results have been positive. We can drill that a little further into that when it comes time to discuss the potential for continuing that position as part of budget development.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be important, is understanding better what her responsibilities have been and the extent to which there is evidence of the benefit, yeah.
Oh, that's a quick question. I think I confirmed it, but just so I'm in the right direction. TRS is much bigger than ERS, right? All right, so there's a decrease in the funding set aside for TRS. That's based on salaries, because salaries are going to go up. It'll still go, it may be flat in actual budget numbers year over year. But ERS is substantially smaller, so the increase in that is in generally less. In order of magnitude. All right. Okay.
How has the process been for you, Catherine?
It's going well. It's a learning curve, but I'm confident that it's going well.
Dr. Benante has faith and does nothing but celebrate you. Nothing but celebrate. Antlers in the house. Great, thank you, Bill. Dr. Benante. And moving on to our workshop topic of the evening, campus master planning update.
Actually, and I just have one more question while I can do that. The restoration of the full state foundation aid is substantially bigger than I remembered it being. I remember it being over time like $600,000 over staged over the course of a couple of years. So I was surprised that in the next budget cycle, it's going up by like $750K.
You're
right.
Initially, when the foundation aid was going to be restored, expressed, it very well may have been a figure, but then there were subsequent increases to foundation aid.
Got it. Okay.
In
The subsequent
state budget.
Okay.
considerations.
Okay.
I think that might be the variable that.
No, I'm not gonna do that. I would come back to something that I think I mentioned, and I'm sure that you're looking to do this, like that's a meaningful amount and can programmatically do some interesting stuff. So like how we consider what the benefits of that, because it is permanent rather than one time.
Correct.
From the federal stuff that came out through COVID, which was you use it now, but you're not going to be secure in having it in 2 years going forward. Okay.
So we'll welcome Melissa back. It's good to see you again, Melissa. Regular here. Now, Melissa is going to present continued planning from CSR and their work on a campus master plan. And I would say that this evening's presentation focuses on interior renovations. Other smaller projects as well that I know you'll qualify better than I would as we go along here to our schools. So the list is going to cover 3 different buildings here, so it could take so it's quite comprehensive. So I'm just going to scoot off to the side and appreciate you being here. Thank you.
So just a quick overview of our agenda today. We're going to look at potential renovation projects, as Dr. Benante mentioned. Focusing once on the main building and then looking at the high school. And then after that, we're just going to do a quick overview of safety and security and closer look at that, just so that everyone's on the same page as far as what our proposed improvements mean. Starting with the main building, again, we have our identified areas of need. I won't read this list to you. We've seen it a few times now. As we go through these plans, you'll see all of our different areas that we are targeting. Throughout the course of the presentation, you'll see a series of starting with an existing plan, and then we'll look at our proposed renovation plan, and I'll walk you through these changes. So here's our existing plan. We're first looking at the entry and main office area for the main building. Taking a closer look at that, this is your existing layout here. Oh, it's really fuzzy on the screen. But the issues that we've identified here are that your entry is not secure. Your greeter is located currently out in the corridor. And there's a lack of staff bathrooms in this area. Over to the left, there is one staff toilet, but its access to it is through a conference room and then through another passageway. So it's difficult to access. It's also non-ADA compliant. And then in the nurse's suite to the right of your entrance here is a toilet room, but again, that is non-ADA compliant. Some improvements have been made, but it's still not meeting compliance. And we've identified a lack or a challenge with your conference room, and that is undersized and really needs to be larger to serve this building well. So taking a look at what those proposed renovations look like, and a closer look at that, what we are proposing we do is swap the main office and nurse on either side of your secure vestibule and make some changes to that. So we are proposing that you expand that vestibule to be larger. So you'll see that the interior leaf of doors is now pushed closer into building. So you're expanding the size of that secure vestibule. Later in the presentation, I'll walk you through the procedure of how this works for safety and security in the building. What this does is allows us to have the main office on the right and a transaction window from that vestibule into that main office. So your greeter can now be located in a secure location in that main office and keep your visitors contained in that vestibule until they've been cleared to enter the building. The all colored areas are where we have renovations. So on the right, we are renovating what used to be the nurse's office into the new main office suite. We're expanding that bathroom there. So you have an ADA compliant bathroom for staff use in this area. Locating your SRO officer here, so they have good visibility to that transaction window and quick access out of that main office, and the middle school principal's office there as well. To the left of your secure vestibule, we're now providing a larger conference room, so much larger than you currently have. And then next to that, a renovated area to provide a new nurse's suite with their separate exam room, storage, and utilizing the existing area of utilities. We're providing now 2 bathrooms in this area, one ADA compliant bathroom that is dedicated for the nurse and one ADA compliant bathroom that is for staff use. And you'll see that access is direct from the corridor. So in totality here, we now have 3 ADA compliant bathrooms in this vicinity. Moving on to taking a look at student intervention services, the challenges we've identified here is really that these are scattered throughout the building. On the first floor, we have OT, PT located, isolated by itself. Over in your elementary school wing, we have a social work office, and then a classroom that's been utilized by 4 separate offices for speech, behaviorist, and the special ed officer. And on the second floor, again, another classroom being utilized. Here, it's not divided into offices, so you have a minimum of 4 staff members utilizing and sharing the same space for ENL, AIS, and again, more special ed offices. Excuse me. On your basement level or lower level, we have 2 psychologist office that flank the stage. Again, accessibility to these areas is quite poor. They're not accessible. You do have to go up a set of stairs to access these. So any student in a wheelchair or crutches or having any mobility issues really are unable to access these offices properly. And again, they're quite isolated and scattered from the rest. So proposed renovations, really, again, you're seeing the colored areas are where we would have renovation. What we are proposing on the first floor is to, I'll start back here. On the first floor, we're proposing to take over 2 classrooms that flank the right side of your entrance. So where you have that large green block, there's currently 2 classrooms there. What we're proposing is you move all these offices to this area. And then those 2 classrooms are being redeployed to those 2 rooms in blue where we previously had intervention offices. So there's not a net gain of classroom space here. It is just a reallocation of space so that we can better utilize student intervention services in a clustered area. So taking a look at this again, we have adjacent to the renovations we just looked at for the main office, we now have an additional suite of offices to the right, entering from a waiting room from the corridor, and then you can enter offices for speech, social worker, behaviorist. And then we're also adding new spaces that don't exist now that were requested during our focus group work. So providing a new ISS or testing room, as well as a de-escalation space. And now providing a much larger OTPT classroom at the far right end there. So it's much larger than the current space they have. And so they're able to bring in more of those activities within the contains of that room, as opposed to having to utilize corridors that they're doing. Additionally, we're proposing to repurpose what is currently the balcony for your gymatorium, leveling the floor there and providing space for 4 additional intervention services. So this is where your ENL, AIS, and psychiatrist would be located. And then utilizing the space that was previously OTPT being utilized now for special education offices. And here's how those 2 areas combined look together. There is a connection between the main office and those intervention suites. So you can have some overlap of visibility of that ISS or testing space and the ability for staff and administration to flow between both offices. This also allows for all the staff in this area to utilize that staff bathroom located in the upper left there, thus reducing the number of staff or faculty that are using the staff bathrooms that are off of the corridor. Moving on to a closer look at these bathroom facilities. Again, these are existing plans. Our challenges that we've identified here is that there's really an insufficient number of staff bathrooms. These are often shared with students, which is not recommended, and many of them are non-ADA compliant, especially the nurse's bathroom. As we just looked at, we've proposed several improvements there. So here on the first floor, as I mentioned, you now have a dedicated staff bathroom that's ADA compliant, that is off of the corridor, so you're not going through a conference room to access that. The bathroom at the nurse's toilet has been made ADA compliant. That ADA compliant bathroom added to the main office. And then additionally, there's on the second floor, an existing staff bathroom. It is shared with the data closet, which means the data closet and data rack is not secure, and it is only a single stall. So what we're proposing to do there is to make that a dedicated a dedicated data closet, and repurpose and renovate the space that is immediately outside of that for a multi-stall ADA compliant staff bathroom. And that would just require relocation of a copy and workroom to one of the other abandoned offices that are affected by the reconfiguration we just looked at. Down on the basement level, there is an existing ADA compliant bathroom that is accessible from one of the art classrooms. So we are recommending that we improve the access to this by relocating the door to that. We'll take a closer look at that when we get to the art renovations. And there are no proposed improvements to the ground floor bathrooms. Looking at fitness and wellness, this is your existing plan at your lower level adjacent to your gym. The challenges we've identified here is really your existing weight room is just that. It's a weight room. It's a very long and narrow, difficultly proportioned room. It's challenging. You really don't have the space to host larger wellness activities such as yoga or aerobics classes. There's really no additional space for additional aerobic equipment or fitness equipment. And the accessibility to this area is a challenge, and that it is not accessible beyond taking a lift through the corridor and going through the gymnasium if you need an accessible path. Our proposed improvements here do include a very small building addition of only 1,285 square feet. We're looking to utilize this existing location and expand the building to provide a much larger space. This could be reconfigured and divided into a couple different rooms, but this is just giving you an idea of the space that is available here. So we're expanding that so that it's larger with the ability to now host classes. This could be for PE use, this could be for athletic team use, and does have the potential for community access as well. It's much larger now to host a variety of equipment and classes. Other improvements we're proposing for this area include renovation of the exterior patio. Currently, we have stairs that enter the cafeteria, stairs that enter the corridor door down in that area as well. We're proposing to renovate that patio area as well as the adjacent parking lot we looked at when we looked at the site reconfiguration. But raising this patio level so that you're meeting the door level of each one of those door entries. So you do now have an accessible entry at both of those points. And providing some renovations in the corridor to split that so that you have a portion of stairs and a ramp within the building. So now makes accessibility to that lower level fitness center easier from the corridor without having to go through the gym. Moving on to visual arts improvements, the challenges we've identified here at this lower level is that really your gallery is not used to its potential. I think the concept and idea thought process was good there, but really this is just being used as storage. Access to this area is only through the art classrooms, which is a bit problematic. And that means access to the art classrooms themselves for staff and students is awkward. You enter one from the left stair and then you enter the other one directly from a different stairwell. So you're not accessing these, from a general main corridor, which is a bit awkward. Additionally, the bathroom down there is only accessible directly from one of these art classrooms. We're going to show you, excuse me, two options for proposed improvements here. Taking a closer look at this. Excuse me. This is what we've identified as option A. This does again include a very small building addition. So you can see we've taken out a portion of the existing exterior wall, expanded that gallery space now so that access to this gallery is from your adjacent corridor over to the left where those larger display cases are. So this is now more purposeful space and accessible space so that the district can use this as an art gallery. It can also become a critique area and instructional space for use of these art classrooms as well. And improves the access to these art classrooms so that you're entering from this area and this really becomes an expansion of your corridor in the area. Again, for that ADA compliant bathroom, we're proposing that you change the door location so that it's accessible from that gallery or corridor area. So now not only can both art classrooms use this, but other people in the building that need an ADA bathroom at this level, even if you're in the adjacent gymatorium here, could access that bathroom. We're also proposing to take the opportunity of your exterior space right here and make some renovations to that patio area. So you now have an expansion of your gallery to the exterior, we're calling this an art garden, but this provides an opportunity for instruction or display to include the exterior environment. So you can have 3D sculptures and things in that area. This is option B. So instead of having a building addition, what we did is really look at how the space in between these two art classrooms was configured and look at ways to improve upon this. So what we're doing here is you can see the two angled dashed lines are where the current art classroom walls are. We're recommending that you basically gut all the spaces between these art classrooms, reconfigure it. You're gaining a little bit more instructional space in the art classrooms, and you're expanding your gallery to again become a little bit more purposeful space for instruction and critique between the two art classrooms, and then also improving access to that bathroom there. This comes at a sacrifice where your storage and kiln are a bit shared, but in our experience, one kiln room for a building of this size is plenty adequate. There are currently 2 kiln rooms and 2 storage rooms that are shared by these facilities, and we just think we can make better use of the space here. Moving on to music, our challenges here are largely dealing with accessibility and really the limited space that is provided here to support your music program. Taking a closer look at this, the different colors here identify the different floor levels on this floor plan. You can really see the challenges here with accessibility. Your cafeteria level, which is identified here in red, does expand into some of those adjacent classrooms, but once you get into your larger of the two music classrooms, you have built-in tiered floors or built-in risers. Access to this room is only from the cafeteria, which in and of itself is awkward, or you access it from a back narrow stairwell, which again is not accessible. And there is a lift within the room to get from the high level to the low level, but it's not very practical to use that on a regular basis. And you can see all the other flanking areas here, the different floor levels and access to them. And then your second music classroom is near your upper left there, the larger of those turquoise spaces. It's quite undersized music classroom. So really, this is a challenging space for us. When we first met with the leadership group and your campus master plan committee, we didn't yet have any plan identified. We wanted to talk through some of the challenges here. An additional challenge for our office is that to date, the district has not been able to locate any existing blueprints for this building. So we don't yet know the construction of this area. We don't know what the foundations look like. We don't know what the structure looks like. So we're going to show some proposed plans here, but a disclaimer, it's going to require some more investigative work to better understand, can we do what we're proposing here? So that's a closer look at these varied floor levels in this area. And these are the identified spaces that we were focusing on. And so focusing on those two music classrooms and shared offices. What we're proposing is to remove your fax classroom from this area. We're going to provide new space for that up on a different floor level. We'll show you that in a minute. But here's an option of how you could reconfigure this space for two larger, properly sized music classrooms. So now you have access to both of these from the corridor. You have one classroom at 1,750 square feet and the other at, I think, almost 1,500, which is quite larger than either of the two spaces you have now, as well as a couple of practice rooms provided there. There is a current office in one of these locations. We're hoping to provide that in the wellness center. If it can't be absorbed there, then you end up with one practice room in this plan here, which is still a net gain of a practice room that you don't have now. Again, disclaimer, this is, assuming that we can level the floor in this area. It would certainly be invasive and a costly renovation, but we can look at the feasibility of that. And this is really our best option to renovate the existing space within the footprint of your building. Up on the first floor, we've identified a classroom that is across the hall from your two science classrooms. That is the largest or one of the largest classrooms in your building. And there are adjacent utilities there. And this is a classroom we would propose you renovate to become a multi-purpose room so that absorbs your fax functions to support your fax program, as well as just general use for a multi-use classroom. Taking a look at STEAM or makerspace, again, the challenges here are that the space is a bit undersized and certainly outdated. Right now, it's just acting as a traditional wood shop. The spaces are divided, separated as a computer lab and a very small shop classroom, really not providing 21st century technologies or instruction for students. So again, we're going to show you two different options. This is option A. Taking a closer look at that, again, we're suggesting a very small building addition of only 215 square feet here, but removing that exterior wall, you can see the dashed lines where those existing walls are now. We're expanding into the existing corridor, providing that small building addition and removing interior walls to provide a much larger STEAM classroom right now that would be provided at a little over 1,600 square feet. This does also provide new exterior doors to the exterior from the adjacent corridor. Option B is to work within the confines or constraints of your existing building. So not removing the exterior wall or making any changes to that corridor, but at least removing the wall that separates your shop from your computer lab and just providing general renovations for this area for a new space to support your STEAM functions. Before I move on to the high school, were there any questions on anything at the main building you'd like to take a look at? So moving on to the high school, again, we had some similar improvements recommended for your secure vestibule entrance area. Again, this is your existing plan. Your existing vestibule is not secure. Visitors do have to enter your building in order to meet with the greeter that is located out in the open in the corridor. Our proposed improvements here, taking a closer look at that, are to provide, again, a transaction window directly between your vestibule and main office. This requires some minor renovations. Currently, you have a guidance office located in the top right or upper right corner of that main office. And your principal's office is configured a little bit different. So recommending to reconfigure some walls here. You'll see where the guidance office has been relocated to in our office suite in a moment, but really just providing better access for our transaction window in that vestibule. Looking at the proposed addition you've previously seen, you're now seeing this addition in greater detail. We wanted to point out a few additional items here. First, with bathrooms, there is a lack of staff bathrooms on your first floor. Currently, this building only has staff bathroom facilities on the second level. The original building plan here did provide staff bathrooms. You can see those two flanking lighter orange colors in the center flanking your elevator. We're proposing that you repurpose those back into the intended staff bathrooms that they initially were intended for. And those offices again are reallocated for the building addition. Take a closer look at this. So on the left is your first floor. So you can see in green your large student center that is an open two-story area. We have some additional spaces that are new spaces for the district being added as well, including another ISS or testing room for the high school students, as well as 2 breakout spaces of different sizes. So this is helping to support your need for both staff use for professional development and meeting or conference spaces, as well as student use for project work, small independent study, or small group work. So just providing some options of available rooms that are in use for staff or students. In the orange is again another series of offices entering a a waiting area, and then providing another cluster of offices here for social workers, psychologists, your guidance and AD offices as well. So similar to the main building, another clustered office suite here to support this building. On the top side of that, you can see the largest classroom here. This is where we're providing a STEAM classroom for the high school students. So that one I showed you a moment ago at the main building would really be focused on supporting elementary and middle school students only. The STEAM classroom here would provide those purposes for high school students. And again, further program development will likely mean that there might be mobile partitions or additional walls that are added in here to divide the space and make it more functional, but just understanding there's a good amount of square footage or real estate that's dedicated to STEAM functions here. Up on the second floor level, we're providing 4 general purpose classrooms. And again, that is because we had 4 classrooms we have identified from the Mabel Merritt building that we would like to absorb into this building to reduce the frequency with which students are moving about campus. So we're trying to keep more contained within this building. And then you can see in green there, the upper lounge area or balcony area of the student center. And again, this is high level, very first pass at this stuff. As we continue down the road, as you absorb this into a capital project, there'd be a lot more programming involved as far as fine tuning all of these spaces and the functionality of them. We're just allocating space at this time. I wanted to give a quick overview of safety and security, but first, is there any questions on the high school building? Okay, so I'll try to go through this really quick in the effort of time. But really what I wanted to show you is what are other districts doing for safety and security improvements, and what are we recommending for you here at Haldane. So I'll walk you through kind of the common procedures that are utilized by most of the districts that we're working with now. It's a series of stepped processes. So the visitor will approach your building, press the call button, there is a camera there, and they are announcing their arrival. Someone in the office then via that intercom and that camera asks for the visitor's reason for their visit. And if they're screened based on just those parameters, that your greeter from the building can now unlock remotely that set of doors and let that visitor enter your building. They're now contained within a secure vestibule that has a transaction window. So your visitor now presents their identification through this transaction window and drawer. This is a bullet resistant assembly here with a microphone. This is what it looks like on the office side. So there's now a drawer that comes back out. You could do this with a little slot as well. There's a couple different approaches to that. What that drawer looks like. Again, this is on the office side. And your greeter now takes their identification, puts it through on a scanner. This automatically scans through a sexual offender database, as well as any custodial agreements or anything you're inputting into the system. Make sure they are cleared in the system and able to enter your building or able to pick up a student. It prints a badge with a picture of their identification that's scanned from their license. Prints them a temporary badge, you give that through the drawer, and then again, you're remotely locking your inner set of vestibule doors to allow them entry into the building, at which point they're able to enter the building, go wherever they need to go, or enter your main office if that's where they're. What that could look like at Haldane, again, this is your plan for the main office, and again, those are all those steps. But really the key here is you're providing a secure vestibule with the transaction window. So that vestibule is a secure lockdown area, and you have multiple chances to screen a visitor before they are entering your building. No longer do they need to come into your building and meet with a greeter that is just sitting out in the hall. Additional improvements are we're proposing that you provide an impact resistant window film. So that is at all glass around your secure vestibule, as well as flanking windows. So we wouldn't generally recommend you do this for your entire building. It's usually overkill and a bit costly. What we're seeing most districts do is harden that vestibule and then any flanking windows to that area or other points that are identified as maybe a target or main entrance. So any secondary entrances you have. And then again, that transaction window would have a bullet resistant glass. And that is it. I do have some overall building plans if we need to look at anything in totality, but really didn't have any additional presentation material. I'm happy to take any questions or take a closer look at anything you'd like.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I've spent the time looking at every iteration, so I really appreciate all the work that you've all done. And I wanted to, I have a question, it's something I brought up before about, I mean, clearly what we've now seen over these several weeks, sort of this the vision board, everything that's possible. It's based on all of the conversations we've had with the community and with the staff, and it's really quite extraordinary to think about what might be possible. But when I think about the contingencies that are built in, I'm curious, just as a working English, the process moving forward, as we as a board and we as a community start to really identify those priorities for ourselves. What does it look like, say, and I'm only using this as for instance, the intervention services, a lot of the student intervention services, they are contingent upon us deciding we want to do that theater, which to me is that, that's a very big ask. So is there a universe, or what does it look like if we decide that, an auditorium is not our priority right now, these special intervention service spaces are, it's a sort of a reorganization and not a back to the drawing board necessarily, but a reexamination of how we have been using these spaces moving forward. And then
Yeah, certainly there is a domino effect, and a lot of things need to happen in totality, everything to happen. The balcony area, for example, though, we're proposing 4 offices go in that area. If you don't do the auditorium, or if that is a later phase, those 4 offices are in one of those classrooms and can remain there. But in order for some of those other actions to happen, you are needing an additional classroom. So there could be a net loss in a classroom if you're not doing everything. You don't have the full domino effect and you're not releasing that real estate of the balcony to make all of those changes. What we're looking for the board is support of everything you've seen. And are these all ideas that you want us to continue developing, or in the issues of the examples where we have multiple options? Is there a direction that we're leaning? We need to take all of this information, one, have it all estimated so we can understand the cost estimate for each one of these. And essentially, we're going to be creating a spreadsheet where every single move is a line item on that spreadsheet with an associated cost. And then we need to take all that, put all that on the table and start to identify, one, are there certain things that need to go together? Like you can only do, option A, B, C, and D together. It's either all or nothing, or there's certain items that are kind of like a menu. You can do this or not do this. And we need to prioritize. Some of the factors in prioritization are one, it's this domino effect. So do we need to do A before we can do B? Does that mean A is a bigger priority than B? We need to see how it meshes with your strategic coherence plan. And is this something that is really having a greater benefit than other items? And then we need to weigh all that with the cost and how that ends up being multiple capital projects that the district can afford over a series of time. So there's still a lot of factors and a lot of work yet to come. Right now, we're just really laying everything all out on the table and making sure that there's support for the overall concept before we start to break that down a little.
And I think I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that's something that we talked about on the side, and then we're always like, we want to communicate to all stakeholders that that's where we are in the process with data center as well. My other response is, because I'm a board member, whenever I hear the word compliance, I shudder a little bit. So all of these indicators of we are not ADA compliant, I'm just curious about, is that something we should then center and prioritize because we're out of compliance? I mean,
The lack of staff bathrooms and the fact that staff are sharing with students right now is a concern and something we would say is a higher priority. We have done calculations to make sure that the district is meeting the minimum number required of staff bathrooms, of student bathrooms, and of ADA compliant bathrooms. So you're meeting your code requirements right now, but is it in a practical location, a feasible, accessible location? That's where we would say, I think there's a bigger challenge, but I think we could all discuss, the priority level that has. But right now, you're meeting minimal compliance. Yeah.
I'll just piggyback on what Sean said. I was just going back and flipping through the document. It would be, I would love to see for some of these, it seems like they could be there, you can piecemeal it. You could do the STEAM classroom renovations in the other building, for instance, without interrupting anything else. But for some of them, it's an if-then process. So that would be useful to have explicitly. I think we can all understand it roughly, but have explicitly. This can exist on its own and can be priced out as a standalone entity.
I think I don't want to interrupt you, but I
No.
think what we'll end up having to do is say, this is item A, and it's a standalone.
Yep.
This is item 1, and it's a standalone. Item 2 has item 2A, 2B,
Right.
2C. There are multiple facets to say you can do all of it, or you can't do,
Right. Right.
all or nothing.
Two other specific questions. I noticed in the repurposing of the balcony into 4 classrooms, public. Is there consideration for repurpose if that's contingent on an auditorium build? If we're building an auditorium, are we going to be using the stage in the existing auditorium? And if not, is there consideration for what that becomes?
We looked at the stage, its location in the building and access to it doesn't really lend itself to be anything else practical that came to mind for us. In all the areas we've identified as a need, with all our focus group meetings and meeting with your administration, there's nothing else in need that we said, hey, the stage is going to be a great location for that. We also can see that, maybe you have smaller assemblies where you're just using your gym floor level and you still want the stage. You don't need the balcony. You're not supporting a 300-person performance anymore. But still, maybe at your elementary or middle school level, you're still having small assemblies, presentations, drama club, or not drama club, but like a talent show or something of that nature. So short of finding any better purpose for the stage, we would say, keep it and utilize it as such.
And second question, you talked about shifting some of the classrooms from Maple Merit into the addition for high school. What's the consideration for the reuse of Maple Merit should that happen?
And that's one of our, if you looked at our items in need, I think I mentioned that at one of our previous meetings, that really we don't have a good solution for that yet either. It's a conversation we're hoping to have with the leadership group, our committee as a whole, as far as brainstorming good uses for that building. It's a lovely building.
Yeah.
It needs renovation no matter what it's going to be used for,
Yeah.
but I think the district has identified that it's not a good use as instructional space.
Right.
So likely staff support space, it could be storage, but I hate to use an entire building just for storage. So,
Right.
we're still exploring options for good use of that building.
Okay.
The board met in that building for a long time.
Are you suggesting it should be a board retreat?
No, no, I just, but it's an interesting dilemma, right? Because we really, the idea is we really don't want students going into and out of there. I feel like there was a point that's where the head of people personnel services used to have their office there. Well, that's not a great place for that necessarily either, right?
Yeah.
It's where I think the school psychologist had it, like, it's because it's removed, it's not a great place to have intrinsic critical services. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Tom Ritzenballer, my partner that's generally here with me or frequently here with me, our conversations to date, we really landed on maybe it's just a professional development building. Another location where we're providing conference rooms and meeting spaces and things, but is it practical to renovate a building for a purpose that, is getting a very small percentage of use, throughout the course of a day, week, month? It's a challenge. It's not an easy one for us. So we're hoping to have some greater conversations and put some minds at work.
We could keep talking. Christmas is coming. Thank you so much. And I think it's like you're not feeling well, or you're having, I hope you're on the other side of here.
I think I'm on the other side of it. It's a lot of talking now. So.
And have a safe trip back.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Moving on to communication from the public. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. The first public comment session is reserved for comments on these special presentations or active agenda items. For those who wish to address the board, please sign in, state your name for the record. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Disparaging remarks and discussion of district personnel are prohibited. Although we do not engage in dialogue, we are listening. Please leave your contact information with our district clerk, Megan Shields, for prompt follow-up from the board president, superintendent. If you haven't, I will have this memorized. Moving on to information reports. Starting with.
We can start with this, Chairman, and what I would recommend if Mr. Elder, you could provide a report for Dr. Cation, because she has a few slides to present. So if we wouldn't mind just going in that order, principals, then Josh and Regina. And I just want to make note to the board that a couple of our administrators are not here this evening. No reports are included. You could review the reports and then report on.
All right, so for the elementary school, we are in the middle of student council led spirit week. Today is Haldane Central Day. Once you are wearing a deer antler headband, your hair requires it. You just gotta go with it. By being an elementary principal, if you cannot wear your English. So our students are engaged in that, and that is exciting and fun, and just gets them excited for our upcoming winter break. Two parts that I wanted to highlight from my board presentation are that we did have our first elementary report cards go home at the beginning of December with the new format. And I put for you just a quick snapshot of why my self-correction data loving mind is excited that they are in our school. So this is a snapshot of just 6 of our standards in, I believe this is from 2nd grade, and what we can now see, whereas before I would have had to print all 300 report cards and just flip through and say, oh, I'm concerned about Ezra, let me look at his report card and look there. I can go now by class and just see a quick snapshot of this is some ELA standards and where a particular class or grade level stands. So right now, those first 2 standards haven't yet been taught this year. They're later in the curriculum. They'll come up later. So no students have been assessed on those. 19 students not assessed at this time. They will be in the 2nd and 3rd trimester. Then as you go through the others, I can see that, I have 2 students that I have concerns with reading fluently with expression. And then I can correlate that to are those students also showing a weakness maybe on the NWEA or on classroom assessments? I would assume on classroom assessments they are, since that's where this information is coming from. Maybe they already have AIS and some interventions that they're getting. What are we seeing there? And whereas before you had to flip through a lot of paper, we can get some quick snapshots that help us triangulate a lot easier. So thank you for supporting that, and it's gonna help us as we have this first trimester and then our winter NWEA in January. Pull that together in a more comprehensive fashion, so that's good for our teachers and it's good for our students in looking. The other piece is maybe more exciting for non-Excel spreadsheet loving minded people behind the Quorum time. Our fourth graders had a visiting artist supported by our arts and education budget. Kim McCormick came in, and with fourth grade as part of their Native American unit, our students built using found and brought in materials, a model of a Native American village that they learned about the history of the village and then created it as part of their arts. So take a look, it was, thought I was only lugging it to the auditorium and then we had a snow date, but I still brought it up here, so please enjoy their beautiful artwork. What they're creating. So thank you for your support of that, and they're doing great work. A lot more artists, not all of the work is accessible to spring, but more artists were in the report and will be visiting throughout the year.
Thank you very much for the outline of how to choose. That's really.
Dr. Sylvie?
Good evening, everyone, and happy holidays. My board report is largely about the announcement of our selection for the community read, Kate Milford's Green Glass House, which if you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you read it, even though it is a young adult book. It has quite the plot twist, and we're looking forward to a really exciting community read. I wanted to spend some time talking about a spirit week that developed by the student council after I submitted my board report. The students were working on it well in advance because I met with two student council leaders actually in November, where they proposed the idea to me and they asked to present the idea to the faculty meeting. So at the December faculty meeting, they proposed a holiday spirit week with a wellness component to it. So it has all the regular holiday spirit week stuff, like today was holiday accessory as well. I gave up on my stamp that I had long ago. I give you a lot of Miss Jamin. The regular, like Friday's ugly sweater day. So it has all the regular spirit week items, but it also has wellness components every single day. So during the lunch block, for example, during lunch block, Coach C provided yoga sign up. Mr. Sniffen and Mr. Virginamo provided weight room sign up. So kids were excited about that. Every slot was taken. Tomorrow there's going to be what in effect turns into a winter field day. So, and this will be like the Wellness Wednesday intensive. So the 6th and 7th grade will spend some time out playing cooperative games on the turf. And all week long, students signed up to be reading buddies for elementary students. So thank you, Ms. Jamin, for like really working with the student council to put all this together. And I'm excited because our kids are really excited about wellness. And I think that this might become a Wellness Wednesday routine and tradition that becomes integrated into our school that students really latch onto, and that student driven that they create so that they can feel great as they're going through middle school, which is feel great in middle school are two things that don't always go together. So I'm really excited about that student driven component. Thank you for listening, because I want to talk to you about it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now moving on to Mr. Elder.
Good evening, everybody. I feel like I'm gonna bring the room down with my board report. Holiday, talk about computer-based testing. But equally important. So an overview of last June, the state of New York announced some details where they're shifting all of their New York State assessments, which we have been doing in paper and pen, are being transitioned to all being online or computer-based testing. So they communicated a timetable or rollout schedule for how this is going to be implemented, which I include on my board report. These tests will be for the 3 through 8 English language arts test, the 3 through 8 math test, and then the newly developed grade 5 and grade 8 science test. So we have some time ahead of time, but the first rollout is the next spring of 2024, and that will be for the grade 5 and grade 8. That's ELA, math, and science for those grades. And then simply they just keep adding a couple of grade levels for the next couple of years. So by spring of 2026, according to their timeline, it's going to be a full mandate for all New York State schools to switch to computer-based testing for that process. So here in Haldane and having some of those conversations we've been having since this happened, we kind of picked some of those conversations up in the fall. I know in the elementary school, they piloted this in some places already. So there's a bulk of work to work from. And what can seem like it's just kind of a simple logistical movement has some more pieces to it. So it's something that we're going to continue to take a look at for the remainder of this year and as we look into next year. I put some questions down there that we started to talk with our director of technology and some other areas, and start engaging some stakeholders in these conversations. But essentially, one of the things is to think about what technology is best for our kids, not only for computer-based testing, but in general. It's a larger conversation we can start having. We think about our K-12 technology needs and thinking that when kids get to computer-based testing, in what ways are they going to be best prepared for that. Secondary, we're looking at what are the curricular and pedagogical shifts for our teachers. Obviously, we want kids going into these situations well-versed. It's not the first time that they have to do this, but it's just a natural extension of some of the things that they're already doing. And then lastly is budget implications, right? We need to be thinking about if we're going to be using the costs or buying anything, replacing things, what kind of that looks like. So as we continue to look through this and look through this mandate, those will be some things that we're focusing on.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. Dr. Benante. So it's kind of exciting that we did get things finally underway with our consulting group, PCG. And so we were able to have them put something together that they presented first to our core group, which includes myself, Dr. Elder, and actually Ken Patnella has been extremely supportive and the person in this whole process. And then we were able to present this PowerPoint to our administrative team and now to you. So we haven't brought it out to the wider public yet because we wanted to kind of share with you. And this really kind of is very broad, but it kind of gives us a sense of the scope of the audit. So without going through all of the slides, because I know you hopefully had a chance to look at it, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. For one, there's their team, and certainly their team does seem to be, they have resumes and experiences that do seem to align with our goals for the audit. This particular slide, I think, just gives you a quick visual on some of the key components of what they consider to be a special education effectiveness domain. And I think it does a lot align with kind of what we were looking at. Again, I tried to really look at more of a systems level approach in this. We could have like zeroed in on IEPs, or we could have zeroed in on how we do co-teaching, but I wanted to look a little bit more broadly. I thought that that was the most useful thing for what our needs are. So, you can see that it covers everything from how we're using our people at, our most precious resource to help our children and what the expectations we hold out for our children, but also those systems and structures that are in place. How do we allocate those resources, and what data do we use to make the decisions on how we allocate those resources? I think this community has been actually really strong on family engagement and involvement, but there's always room for improvement. And we'll talk a little bit about those focus groups that will include family members and the community input. Hopefully I'll get some of your input as well. And then looking at our learning environment, our specialized services, and with a lens really on being increasingly inclusive. I think that it's not a surprise that, in a smaller district,
Sometimes we don't have cohorts to run entire programs, but we have more and more children who have neurodivergence and who learn differently. And so I think, you know, if we've already been doing some things, but it's time to maybe consider how we can do more to be more inclusive. And that's something that we were definitely hearing from the people when we spoke to parents and family members, learn differences community and so on and so forth. And then how can we as leaders in this district together with the school board members, how can we enact some of these changes and work together in partnership? We're not just looking at Haldane either. We are in some conversations with some local school districts, and some of that was, you know, forced upon us a little bit for things like busing issues and bus drivers, and can we combine routes? But also we are in very preliminary early conversations with Garrison to say, well, hey, if I have 2 or 3 kids and you have 2 or 3 kids, can we do something together? So we're looking at all of those things. The next slide I want to really highlight are these questions, because I think this is where the rubber hits the road. We have to ask the right questions if we're going to get answers that we hope are useful and actionable. These questions, as you can see, are fairly broad, but they do kind of cover some of the things that we really want to drill down on. So we really can't, for example, focus on systems and structures if we don't look at our budget and our staffing, you know, so all of these things are interrelated. Also, we can't really look at special education services if we don't look at how robust our MTSS structures are. So they're all intertwined, and therefore we will, you know, hopefully have some information on all of these areas. With, I think, our most targeted goal being looking at our continuum of services. So I think most of you are familiar with what that means, but you know, we want to be able to see what a student with special needs experiences are K through 12. You know, are we able to support their needs? Are we able to adjust and pivot and meet their needs as they move through the school grades as well? So these questions can also be somewhat adjusted after our focus groups and after they gather some data. It may mean that some of them have to be tweaked a little bit. But that would be an area that I would, you know, welcome your input on if there's something that you see that we can tighten up on. And then I guess the timing for all of this. Let's get ahead to our timeline. So we've already begun. We've started collecting information and sending it. And we have we're scheduling our classroom visits for actually the focus groups and the classroom visits are proposed for the 2nd week in January. So we've been working on communication. I was in a special education meeting today with the high school and middle school special ed team, and I'm really getting the word out there. So I want teachers to feel very comfortable and confident that these are classroom visits, not observations. They're not being observed. They're not being scrutinized. I feel very strongly that, you know, everything I've seen, that we have really good, strong, dedicated teachers, but it's about the continuum and about the different kinds of classrooms. So I hope that they go visit. We're going to schedule visits so that they see what does tier 3 multisensory reading look like. What does it look like if I walk into an ICT room, an integrated co-teach classroom with 2 teachers? What does it look like if I walk into a high school special class math room? You know, what does it look like if I go into a resource room? So they're going to try to sample all of the different places that we have currently on our continuum. So ultimately, there'll be a lot more information brought forth for all of us to consider together. And over the course of the rest of the winter and into the spring, we should have a draft for you to look at. And the idea would be that by the end of this school year, we would have that finished product, and PCG will come in here and do a presentation for you. You'll have it, some of the information in advance. But the idea then would be over the next several years to hopefully enact some of these, some recommendations that we can really affect some good change for our students.
I was very enthusiastic about it, having read this before. I was pleased to hear something about the process of identifying stakeholders, which I think is key. And are you primarily starting with the on the staffing side and then moving out towards parents? And
we're going to try to bring focus groups for all of them in that same week. Great. So literally, like this evening, as I was waiting for the meeting, I drafted the letter out to the community, looking for volunteers, for people who might be interested in being on a focus group. And so yes, that will happen that week, hopefully. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Oh, that's great. It's wonderful.
Really
looking forward
I am too, you know, it's like you're opening everything up but I think that's great. You have to kind of just really look in it and, you know, get me to know everything much more deeply, so that'll help me too.
And I guess I also wanted to just note, it's encouraging to hear about reaching out to Harrison, talking about the shared services is something that I've been hearing since I got on the board. And it has never been something that it's been visible to me. So that's something thinking about is encouraging.
Yeah.
Because I know the learning differences, community are coming together again, both Harrison and Haldane, really
Yeah.
in a productive way.
And I can say it just, you know, unofficially, and we'll be talking more when I do like a special education report, which I believe is in February. We have a decent number of children coming up through preschool right now with special education needs, but more significantly, quite a few children who are on the autistic spectrum. So I think that, you know, this is what a lot of families have, you know, are working with this, and we can look at, we have to be prepared for that.
Right, because there's actually thinking about, like you said, you talked about the continuum of services, but also really thinking about planning long term for the continuum of needs that those children will have as they grow and develop.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Moving on. I'll let you finish that. Consent agenda minutes. These are the minutes from our December 6th, 2022 business meeting. And motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to committee minutes. These are the minutes from the Code of Conduct Committee. I participated in that conversation. It was a robust conversation. Not a lot of change was put there, except we did discuss maybe filling some positions that sort of have been historically empty.
I was encouraged just to see that the task that the committee had made for itself was to review historical discipline data. I thought that was a really interesting. I mean, we've been working on the code of conduct for such a long time. It's great. There's not work to have to do on the document itself, which really speaks to tremendous work of people over many, many years. But the opportunity now to do some other work is nice.
And I guess we should always invoke Margaret Parr when there's something. Let's- Moving on to consent agenda financial. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? There are a lot of wonderful programs funded here, both by, so gratitude to the Haldane Foundation for Arts and Science for their doing. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to consent agenda personnel. May I have your attention, please?
So moved.
Second.
I have some notable retirements here.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that Ms. Spratt and Mr. Doherty both indicated their intent to retire at the end of this. Or I believe we have one more coming, so that we just see in time for tonight's meeting. That'll be our next agenda. So also Mr. Zuzis, although with CSDI, it's 2 years in the future, there'll be time to acknowledge and celebrate Christmas as well, but for now we look forward to celebrating Ms. Spratt, it's regarding its contribution to the community for its school.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, board committee reports. Policy.
I think the only thing we're gonna meet again in January.
Yep, and continue our ongoing, we wrapped up the audit, like continuing our ongoing review.
Moving on to new business. Ms. Shields, yes.
Unfinished. There's no-
You know, funny, this is the point at which my agenda. Goes back to this.
Oh, it's a different-
Moving on to unfinished business. superintendent's evaluation, which we discussed.
Yeah, we do. I want to thank the board for and Dr. Benante for engaging in a really productive conversation. It's always a really beneficial opportunity for us to check in and really look at the work that's going on and more, and I appreciate everyone.
Great.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for leading the way so wonderfully in the whole process. Every year we do it, it's more efficient and I learn more.
So definitely I'm learning as we go along as well.
Moving on to our policy review, second readings and adoption.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby adopts the following Haldane Central School District policies as attached: 3430 and 8320.
May I have a motion, please?
So
Any discussion?
just want to appreciate Maggie's efforts to pull together the diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, which had received a lot of attention. Districts crafting had received a lot of attention last school year. And I think the easy thing would have been to have just found one that was out there and adopted it. But the board really had decided to sit with it and Maggie took on crafting her own policy. I think her time with that, and I think we landed in a better place. So Maggie's contributions to holding policy.
I'll second that. I was really so fortunate for us. Like, great.
I haven't heard any feedback. They're looking for a little bit of. Not from you guys, I got feedback. From public.
Well, I mean, it was a conversation, I recall having a conversation about this very early on when we first started the board and something we talked about it, and we had considerable talk about the best way to avoid crafting this. And we explored the idea of a committee, and I feel like without a committee, where it's something like this, I think. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to new business now. CSE, CESE recommendations, Ms. Shields.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the committees on special education and preschool special education as presented.
Yeah, motion please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Policy review, first reading. Ms. Shields.
This is the first reading, so we don't need to do the resolution.
Yeah.
This is 1510.
This is 1510.
Oh, that's right.
This is really, yeah, this is it.
That's it.
Although I have to say, I saw that it wasn't until I saw the resolution that they're only extending this option through 2024.
For all that.
I never realized that. It was like, you talked about it so many times and you didn't have the public hearing. Anyway,
And it even says, it says permanently and then until 2020.
that until 2024 did catch me
Yeah.
off guard, but regardless, at this point, it does open up this possibility if the circumstances require it, and it allows us to keep as many people involved in their active commitment to the board as possible. And then all the-
All right, communication with the public. I'm not going to say it all, but I'm just going to we're good. Moving on board reflections.
Had the chance to attend Midsummer Night's Dream. Some phenomenal actors in our senior class that we will certainly miss. I'm certain there are ones coming up to replace them. It seems there always are. There's a pipeline of good performers, but it was good. And I have to admit, at the end, I went up to David McNall and I said, you could hear really well. Sometimes in that auditorium, especially up in the balcony, it gets muddled. And I was like, it was almost like the students have been working on it a lot and trying to dial it in, and it was clear as day. It was lovely, well done.
I'm
Right
glad,
there.
I'm glad you brought up Damien too, because I feel like he is the invisible hero
Yeah.
of that whole program. And he should be centered as a volunteer who I see around this office. I just staff.
I'd just like to mention the elementary and middle school concert that Bill had stated. Was not just a packed house, was a standing room. Basically in the hallway. But the students did an incredible job, very amazing. Not just, not just the singing, but the musicians as well. It was really top notch. It's great. It's great.
And it speaks so much that it would be standing room only. It's interesting because I really considered going and then it came out to make it. But it's interesting, like, that it was that many people there. It just really speaks, I think, to how glad people are to be back out and in school and seeing things going on. And that's really nice to hear. Thanks for sharing that.
No, I just wanted to third that because, and extend kudos to the music staff as well. I mean, they did such a good job. It can't be easy to do what they do. And they executed it. So, very enjoyable.
I'll just note that we're doing so with limited time,
Yeah.
with the way the schedule sets up, so if I were doing part of the thing. One thing we're looking at in the scheduling work is how we could better center music instruction in relation to other areas that over time have taken precedence, but so that's it is amazing what they're able to do with the limited time that they have with their kids. The only other final thought I have is an expression of gratitude and appreciation for our community. Happy holiday and happy new year. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Have a second, please. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Oh, yeah.
What's that?